I had been working for weeks, pouring my heart and soul into organizing the biggest charity bake sale our town had ever seen. I stayed up till 3 a.m. most nights, frosting cupcakes, perfecting cookies, setting up donation booths. Every little detail was mine. On the morning of the sale, the energy was electric. People started pouring in, the tables were lined with desserts I had spent sleepless nights creating, and for a moment, it felt like all the hard work was finally about to pay off. But just as the crowd gathered, ready to celebrate the effort behind it all, Karen, yes, that Karen, waltzed in, wearing a fake smile and holding a clipboard like she ran the whole event. I watched in horror as she loudly thanked everyone for coming to her bake sale, posing for photos and taking credit for every cake, every brownie, every pie I had made with my own hands. My mouth literally fell open, but the applause drowned out any protest I could have made, and in that moment, I realized something that made my blood boil even hotter. Karen didn't just want a slice of the spotlight. She wanted the whole damn cake. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I overheard the mayor himself thanking her for her generous contributions to the community, promising to highlight her efforts in the town newsletter. I stood there frozen, cupcake frosting still on my hands, while Karen practically bathed in praise that didn't belong to her. But even as the injustice burned inside me, a tiny voice in my head whispered something different, something dangerous. It said, "Let her have today, because tomorrow, you're going to give her a reason to regret ever crossing you." As I walked home that day, every step felt heavier than the last. My apron was still dusted with flour and my hands ached from hours of baking, but none of that compared to the bruising my pride had just taken. The further I got from the bake sale, the clearer it became. I couldn't let Karen get away with it. She had taken the credit for my work, stolen the applause meant for me, and rubbed it in my face like it was her divine right. And yet, in some twisted way, she had done me a favor, because as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was ambition. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the tiny mess of frosting and crumbs left over from my baking marathon, and that's when the idea hit me like a lightning bolt. If Karen could build her fake little empire off my hard work, what was stopping me from building a real one? I didn't just want to beat her. I wanted to outshine her so thoroughly that no one would ever remember her name without thinking of me. The first thing I did was sketch out a plan right there on the back of an old grocery receipt, scribbling ideas for a bakery that would be so good, so full of heart, that people would feel it in every bite. And this time, nobody, not even a clipboard-wielding Karen, was going to steal it from me. But dreams need fuel, and mine was still just smoke and sparks. So I spent the next few days in a frenzy, researching how to start a bakery, what licenses I'd need, how to budget, and even down to designing a logo that captured everything I wanted my bakery to stand for: honesty, love, and community. I poured every sleepless night, every ounce of anger, and every flicker of hope into this dream. And the more I worked, the more unstoppable I felt. Yet starting a bakery wasn't something that could happen overnight. And life had a funny way of throwing hurdles at you just when you started running. I needed money, real money, not just the pocket change I had saved from odd jobs. So I picked up extra shifts wherever I could, waiting tables, babysitting, tutoring. If there was $1 to be earned, I was chasing it. There were nights I came home so exhausted I could barely keep my eyes open, but every time I thought about Karen standing there, soaking up the credit for my blood, sweat, and tears, it lit a fire under me all over again. Meanwhile, Karen was basking in the aftermath of her fake success. She was showing up at town meetings, throwing bake sale stories into every conversation, bragging about her achievements. It was almost laughable how desperate she was to milk every last drop of attention out of it. But I stayed quiet. I let her enjoy the calm before the storm. What she didn't know was that I had already secured a tiny, rundown storefront at the edge of town, a place most people wouldn't look at twice. The paint was peeling, the floorboards creaked, and the old sign above the door was so faded you could barely read it. But to me, it was a palace waiting for its crown. Every evening after work, I'd drag my tired feet to that dusty little shop and get to work, scrubbing, painting, fixing whatever I could with my own two hands. Friends and even strangers, People who had tasted my desserts at the bake sale and actually knew the truth started pitching in little by little. Some donated baking supplies, others helped me paint the walls, and somehow, that broken little shop started to come alive again. It became a symbol not just of my dreams, but of a community that wanted something real to root for. The first day I fired up the ovens in my own shop was like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. The smell of warm bread, vanilla, and sugar filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere that was mine and mine alone. I decided to name the bakery Second Chance Sweets, because that's what it was, a second chance at showing the world who I really was. But I wasn't just going to sell pastries. No, I had a bigger plan. I decided that every single dollar of my first month's profits would be donated to charities in Karen's name. That's right. If she wanted to play the hero so badly, I was going to make sure she got exactly what she asked for, with a twist she'd never see coming. The opening day was nerve-wracking. I barely slept the night before, convinced no one would show up, that maybe Karen had somehow poisoned the town against me. But as the morning sun rose and I nervously unlocked the door, a line had already started forming down the block. Word had spread about who had really been behind the famous bake sale, and the town was ready to rally behind me. Inside, the bakery buzzed with energy. Kids pressed their noses to the glass display cases, couples sat at cozy tables sharing slices of cake, and every so often, someone would walk up to me, squeeze my hand, and say, "It's about time." With every cookie I sold, every muffin that disappeared from the trays, I could feel a little piece of my broken heart healing. Yet deep down, I knew the final act of my quiet revenge was still to come. I had set up a beautiful donation wall in the bakery, listing every charity and cause we were supporting, and every single one bore a little gold plaque that read, "In honor of Karen Smith, our community's sweetest hero." I wish I could have bottled the moment when Karen herself walked through the door. It was about a week after opening. I saw her before she saw me, and for a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. She strutted in with her usual air of entitlement, scanning the bakery with a smug smile, probably assuming I had copied her idea of a bake sale success. But as she read the donation wall, her face shifted, the smile cracked, her eyebrows furrowed. She looked around and realized the entire place, every customer, every employee, every crumb, was celebrating her in the most sarcastic, brilliant way possible. She wasn't the adored queen she thought she was. She was the unwitting mascot of a bakery she had inspired through betrayal. Karen tried to play it off, laughing awkwardly and making some snide comments about how imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But no one was laughing with her. The customers barely glanced at her. She was invisible in a room she expected to dominate. And as she stormed out, flustered and humiliated, I realized something even sweeter than any cake I had ever baked. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't come from fighting back loudly. Sometimes it comes from building something so good, so real, so undeniable, that the people who wronged you can't even compete. They're forced to watch you thrive while they fade into the background, forgotten, irrelevant, small. As Karen slammed the door behind her, a group of customers burst into spontaneous applause, not for her, but for me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the girl who had been robbed. I felt like the woman who had risen. The bakery was mine. The success was mine. And no one, not even Karen, could ever take that away again. But even then, as I wiped down the counter and shared smiles with the customers still enjoying their treats, a tiny voice in my head whispered that Karen wasn't finished yet. People like her never quit when they lose. They plot, they scheme, they get desperate. And sure enough, I would soon find out that Karen's next move would be even crazier than the first. And this time, she wouldn't just try to steal the credit. She'd come after the bakery itself. After Karen's dramatic exit from my bakery, I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. I let myself believe for a brief, beautiful moment that her ego had finally taken a hit big enough to make her back off for good. But people like Karen don't retreat quietly. They simmer. They plot. They come back louder, pettier, and twice as reckless. It started small at first. Flyers mysteriously showing up around town with passive-aggressive slogans about supporting real local talent and not rewarding copycats. They didn't mention my bakery by name, but the implication was as clear as a bakery window after a deep clean. Then came the anonymous bad reviews on social media, each one more ridiculous than the last. Complaints about finding rocks in the cookies, imaginary hair in the cupcakes, and how the owner has a bad attitude. It was laughable, honestly, how transparent it all was. Still, each one felt like a tiny needle, pricking at the thick skin I had fought so hard to grow. I wasn't about to let her win, but I also wasn't going to stoop to her level. Instead, I came up with something better, something that would destroy her attempts to bring me down without me ever having to throw a single punch. I decided to double down on kindness. Every week, I launched a new sweet kindness campaign at the bakery. Customers could nominate someone in the community who deserved a little extra love, a hardworking teacher, a tired nurse, a lonely neighbor, and we would deliver a free box of goodies to them, no strings attached. Words spread like melted butter on warm toast. People weren't just coming for the pastries anymore, they were coming for the feeling, for the way the bakery made them feel seen, valued, and connected. Every cookie we gave away felt like a shield against Karen's petty attacks, and with every shield we raised, her arrows became more and more meaningless. But Karen, being Karen, wasn't about to just watch from the sidelines. Oh no. She upped the ante in ways I could never have predicted. One rainy Tuesday, a health inspector showed up unannounced at my bakery. Clipboard in hand, stern look on his face, he combed through every inch of my shop like he was searching for buried treasure. I had nothing to hide, of course. I ran a clean, honest operation, but the timing was suspicious. Too suspicious. After he left, satisfied but puzzled at finding nothing wrong, a neighbor quietly tipped me off. Apparently, someone had called in an anonymous complaint about unsafe food handling practices. I didn't have to guess twice who it was. The attacks kept coming, like waves against a rock, but the rock was stronger than she knew, and it wasn't just me anymore. The town had taken notice. Loyal customers started leaving real reviews online, sharing their genuine experiences. Local bloggers wrote articles about the bakery's community efforts. People started posting pictures of the free cookie boxes they received, tagging the bakery with hashtags like #sweetkindness and #realcommunity. Karen had inadvertently turned me from a small-town baker into a symbol of resilience. Still, there was a part of me that burned for a final, undeniable, poetic closure, something that would leave no doubt who the real villain and hero were in this twisted little drama. So when the town council announced they were hosting their annual spring fair and invited local businesses to participate, I knew exactly what I had to do. I signed up immediately, securing a booth right near the entrance. But I didn't just plan to sell pastries. No, I planned something bigger. I launched a campaign called Bake It Forward. For every item sold at the fair, a matching item would be donated to local shelters, hospitals, and senior homes. And just to make sure the message hit home, every box would come with a handwritten note that said, "Made with love by Second Chance Sweets, because kindness is sweeter when shared." The fair day dawned bright and breezy, and I could barely contain my excitement as I set up my booth. The display was perfect. Rows of colorful cupcakes, delicate cookies, rich brownies, and a giant poster explaining the Bake It Forward campaign. Within minutes of the gates opening, a crowd had formed around my booth. It was electric, the energy buzzing louder with every purchase. Kids giggled as they picked out treats bigger than their faces, parents smiled as they read the notes, and volunteers from shelters and hospitals came by just to thank me personally. And just as I was handing a box of cupcakes to a little girl with pigtails, I saw her, Karen, standing there off to the side, arms crossed, a sour look plastered across her face. She wasn't running a booth. No one had invited her. She was just watching as the community she thought she could manipulate chose me instead. For a moment, our eyes locked. She opened her mouth, maybe to throw some snide comment, maybe to feign indifference, but before she could say anything, a group of volunteers from the local hospital swarmed me, thanking me profusely and asking for a picture together. Karen was literally shoved aside by the tide of genuine gratitude and goodwill. And in that moment, standing there surrounded by smiles and laughter and real, tangible love, I realized that the best revenge wasn't just succeeding, It wasn't just proving her wrong. It was proving that kindness, real kindness, wasn't a weakness. It was the ultimate strength. Later that evening, as I packed up the empty trays and counted the donations ready to be delivered, I heard a commotion near the entrance. Curious, I wandered over, and there was Karen, red-faced and arguing with one of the fair organizers. Apparently, she had tried to set up her own impromptu booth, hawking cheap store-bought cookies, claiming she was raising funds for charity. But without a proper application or any proof, the organizers had shut her down immediately. She stood there, fuming, as people walked by without even giving her a second glance. I watched from a distance, feeling a pang of something almost like pity, almost. But then I remembered the lies, the sabotage, the sheer audacity, and that pang faded into a firm, clear peace. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of one of the fair's banners fluttering in the breeze. It read, "Spring forward with kindness." And I smiled, because in the end, that's exactly what I had done. Karen had unleashed my ambition when she stole my credit. She had sharpened my resilience when she tried to tear me down. And now, by trying so hard to destroy me, she had unknowingly built me into something unbreakable. But just when I thought the story had found its sweet, satisfying ending, life, as it always does, threw one more curveball my way. Something that would take this tale of revenge, kindness, and resilience to a whole new level. And trust me, not even Karen could have seen it coming. After the unforgettable success of the spring fair, where Karen's bitterness got crushed under an avalanche of real kindness, I thought maybe she'd finally retreat to her corner and lick her wounds in peace. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who knew how to take a quiet defeat. Instead, she brewed, she stewed, she plotted something that, in her mind, would restore her former glory and somehow bring me down in the process. But little did she know, the universe had already written a script for her, one she would regret starring in. About 2 weeks after the fair, the local news station picked up on our Bake It Forward initiative. A light, feel-good piece was exactly what they needed, and they loved the heartwarming angle of community, kindness, and resilience. They scheduled an interview with me inside the bakery, and I agreed, although a part of me braced for Karen's reaction once she found out. The day of the interview, the bakery buzzed with excitement. Customers came in just to watch the crew set up, and loyal supporters offered to stay late to help. The news anchor, a cheerful woman with a natural warmth to her, spent over an hour talking to me about how the idea came to life and how the town had rallied behind it. Everything was going beautifully until the door chimed and, like a bad penny, Karen walked in. She had no idea the news crew was there. Her face twisted in confusion for a half second before she rearranged it into a smug smirk. She strutted up to the counter, loudly demanding to speak to the real owner because she had important business to discuss. The entire bakery froze. The cameras kept rolling discreetly, and there I was, standing across from her, microphone clipped to my shirt, blinking in disbelief. Instead of losing my cool, I leaned into the moment. With a polite but firm voice, I said, "I'm the owner. How can I help you?" Her eyes flickered to the cameras and back to me, realizing too late that her every word could be recorded and aired. She stuttered something about wanting to offer collaboration opportunities because she had connections that could really help small businesses like mine. It was such an awkward, desperate ploy that even the news anchor raised an eyebrow. Trying to save face, Karen attempted to make it seem like we were old friends reconnecting, throwing in exaggerated laughs and fake stories about how she helped inspire my bakery. The cameraman, sensing gold, kept recording everything. I played along, smiling tightly, answering her nonsense with vague politeness, all while knowing exactly what was happening. Karen thought she was weaving herself into my success story, but instead, she was tying the rope tighter around her own reputation. After she finally left, the news crew pulled me aside. "Is she always like that?" the anchor whispered, half laughing. I shrugged and just said, "She's passionate." They laughed and wrapped up the segment, but not before agreeing to include a tiny, not-so-subtle moment where Karen's awkward interruption made her look exactly like the clout chaser she was. When the story aired that weekend, It exploded. People loved the heartwarming bakery angle, but what really caught fire was the unintentional comedy of Karen's desperate crash into the spotlight. Memes started circulating online, screenshots of Karen's wide-eyed awkward smile with captions like, "When you realize you're not the main character," and "When you try to steal the show but forget your lines." It was brutal. It was glorious. And it was everywhere. Local Facebook groups, Instagram stories, even TikTok. Someone made a side-by-side comparison video of Karen awkwardly crashing my interview alongside a famous sitcom scene of a character trying and failing to fit in. It got thousands of views overnight. Karen's worst nightmare wasn't just being ignored, it was being noticed for all the wrong reasons. For days, she didn't show her face around town. When she finally did, her posture had changed. No more strutting, no more smug smiles, just a tight-lipped scowl and quick darting glances like she expected someone to snap a photo or whisper behind her back at any moment. And honestly, they probably were. I didn't revel in her misery, but I couldn't deny the poetic justice of it all. Her own hunger for attention had handed her the very thing she feared most: public humiliation. But, as always, Karen wasn't someone who knew when to quit. Instead of laying low and letting the storm pass, she made the fatal mistake of trying to fight the internet. She posted long, rambling Facebook rants about fake friends, ungrateful business owners, and how small minds can't handle big personalities. She tagged local businesses, threatened lawsuits, and accused the news station of setting her up. Each post was more unhinged than the last, and each one only fed the fire. People who hadn't even seen the original news segment started tuning in just for the drama. Even folks from nearby towns knew the name Karen now, and not in the way she had ever hoped. The final nail in her coffin came about a month later when the town organized a community appreciation night to celebrate local businesses and volunteers. I was invited as an honored guest to receive an award for the bakery's community efforts. Karen, of course, wasn't invited, but that didn't stop her from showing up. She marched into the event wearing an outrageously flashy dress, head held high, as if she was the guest of honor. People watched her with a mixture of amusement and horror as she tried to insert herself into conversations, dropping hints about how much she had done behind the scenes for the community. Nobody took the bait, not one single person. In fact, when the MC announced my name and called me on stage to receive the award, the applause was so thunderous that Karen's face visibly crumpled for just a second before she masked it with a forced smile. I thanked the community, spoke from the heart, and wrapped up my speech by saying, "Kindness is contagious, and thanks to this community, we're just getting started." The audience erupted again, and somewhere in the back of the room, Karen slipped quietly out the door, unnoticed by everyone but me. As the night wound down and I packed away my plaque, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also a deep sense of closure. Karen's reign of entitlement was over, not because I fought her with the same dirty tactics she used, but because I stayed true to who I was, and the world saw the truth for itself. And yet, deep down, I knew Karen wasn't truly finished. People like her never really are. There's always one more scheme, one more desperate grasp for attention. And as I turned off the bakery lights that night, I had the oddest feeling that the next chapter of this saga was already quietly unfolding in the background, waiting to reveal itself when I least expected it. And oh, when it did, it would be bigger, crazier, and more unbelievable than anything that had come before. Life had a funny way of tying everything up with a perfect, messy little bow. After Karen's humiliating tumble into unwanted internet fame, you'd think she'd finally learned to keep her head down. For a while, she did. She disappeared from the bakery scene, stayed away from community events, and even seemed to vanish from social media altogether. Some people thought she had moved out of town, but I knew better. Karen was like a volcano. You couldn't always see the pressure building, but you could bet your last cookie that eventually she was going to erupt. And boy, did she. It started small. Strange, passive-aggressive notes left on the bakery's door after hours. Anonymous one-star reviews popping up online with bizarre complaints like, "Owner too happy, clearly hiding something." Flyers with weird accusations taped to nearby street poles. No one ever caught her in the act, but come on, everyone knew it was Karen. Her energy was unmistakable, like a bad perfume you could recognize from a mile away. At first, I ignored it. I kept baking. I kept smiling. I kept showing up for my customers and my community, refusing to give her the attention she craved, and slowly her antics seemed to lose steam, until the grand reopening of the town square. Months of renovation had turned our sleepy little downtown into a charming, bustling destination. Shops were freshly painted, lights were strung across the streets, and a massive weekend festival was planned to celebrate. Food trucks, live music, artisans selling handmade goods. It was everything Karen used to crave being at the center of. And she couldn't stand being excluded. So she made one final, desperate move. She showed up at the festival with a stand of her own, or at least she tried to. She dragged a battered folding table into the middle of the square, dumped a few sad-looking baked goods onto it, and started shouting about her exclusive treats. No permit, no invitation, just pure chaotic Karen energy. Within minutes, festival organizers swooped in, asking her politely but firmly to pack up. Karen, in true Karen fashion, refused. She demanded to speak to whoever was in charge, shrieking that she had a right to be here. The crowd started to gather. Phones came out. Someone even set up a live stream. It was happening again, but this time in real time, with an audience already primed to mock her every move. I was at my bakery's official booth nearby when I heard the commotion. I didn't even need to see it. I knew it was her. My heart raced, not with fear, but with the electric thrill of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, you don't have to lift a finger for karma to do its job. Festival security eventually escorted her away, but not before she delivered a full-blown meltdown worthy of a reality TV finale. "I built this town!" she screeched as she was led off, arms flailing. "You're nothing without me!" Her voice cracked and broke, echoing down the newly renovated streets as people openly laughed and filmed her. A little boy standing near me whispered to his mom, "Is she okay?" And his mom just shook her head sadly. It was over. Really, truly over. Karen's last desperate gasp for relevance had backfired spectacularly. The cherry on top? A local TikToker captured the whole thing and edited it into a hilarious montage. Clips of Karen ranting, tripping over her own table, and finally being escorted off with the caption, "When the main character syndrome hits too hard." It went viral. Again. But this time, the whole region knew her name, and not in a good way. As for me, business boomed. The bakery saw record sales that weekend. New customers came in just to say they supported what we stood for. Old customers brought their friends and family. Our little bakery became a symbol of community spirit, resilience, and a reminder that real success doesn't come from stepping on others. It comes from lifting them up. A few weeks later, sitting in my little shop after closing, sipping tea and watching the sunset through the bakery windows, I felt a deep, glowing sense of peace. Karen's noise had finally faded into the background hum of life, just another weird story people told newcomers to town. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to prove anything, because in the end, kindness really had won. And to the people listening right now, you see, that's the real magic behind this story. It's not just about watching someone like Karen crash and burn, though let's be honest, it was pretty satisfying. It's about how staying true to yourself, no matter how much noise others make, is the ultimate victory. That's why stories like these matter. They remind us that decency isn't boring, it's powerful. That kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. That when you build something with love, no amount of bitterness can tear it down. So if you enjoyed riding this crazy roller coaster with me, if you felt that little thrill every time karma showed up right on time, then you're exactly the kind of person I love having here. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and be part of this growing community where real stories, real heart, and a little bit of poetic justice are always on the menu. Because trust me, the world is full of Karens, and the best way to beat them is by living your best life louder than their hate. Stick around, more unbelievable stories are coming, and you won't want to miss a single one.